High Elves are probably the best starting place for any new fan to Total War Warhammer. They have relatively simple mechanics, a powerful roster, and a good selection of lords displaying a range of playstyles. But of those lords, only one can be the best, and to find that out, let's rank every single High Elf legendary lord from worst to best. And if you want to know the best way to avoid ads on these videos, it's by being a channel member. 0 ads for $1 a month. Nothing more to say than that. Coming in last place we have Tyrion. Despite how simple and small his list of faction effects are, they actually pack a pretty decent punch. The small relations boost with other High Elves make him the most likely candidate to confederate all of Ulthuan under his banner. The construction time for the Shrine of Cain is a nice feature as it's relatively close, and it's either going to be him or Alariel that ends up with it. And the recruitment time reduction for cavalry and infantry is good, clean fun, and pretty damn strong. Tyrion of course starts his campaign in Lothern in the southern port of Ulthuan. His initial war is one of the most time consuming out there, with the army in the Shrine of Azurin building up power whilst he works his way around. However, once it's out of the way, it's business as usual, mopping up the riffraff nearby like Greenskins, Dark Elves, Chaos, and any High Elf who won't bend the knee. You do have to worry about enemies coming from the sea, like Dark Elves to the north, Noctilus to the south, but for the most part you have a pretty insular game on the donuts before deciding where you want to go. His army effects are just as simple as his faction ones, but sadly not quite as strong. 50% upkeep reduction is massive, but it's only for early game cheap units, so you're not saving that much money, and it's only at the start of the game. Recruit rank increase for Lord and Seaguard is pretty great, but I'd have liked to have seen some extra stat bonuses outside of what they can get by leveling up naturally. His unique skill line starts off strong, with a huge boost to leadership aura size and effect. So I could really stop there and just give him first place and wrap up the video here. Technically, this is only one of his choices of unique lines, with the rest of his line offering diplomatic and campaign bonuses for settlement building and recruitment. His other sacrifices local control to massively boost his stats, so that's neat, but probably not all that worth it. In combat, Tyrion is a pretty basic frontlines battler. He has excellent melee ability with outstanding damage and the ability to keep himself alive with defense and armor. Even once he gets on his mount, he's still as hard to take down, along with the added fun of speed and charge bonus. His only real weakness is his small size, limiting his damage output per battle, but it helps keep him nearly unkillable, so I can only complain so much. Now, before anyone says anything, I don't think Tyrion is bad. In fact, I think he's one of the best possible choices you can make for your first campaign when you're just starting out. However, compared to the other High Elves, he simply falls behind in almost every category. This was one of the toughest rankings I've made so far, so I had to make use of scoring each category individually, and Tyrion came close to last in almost everything despite still being a great lord. His main strength is the great start on Ulthuan. It's relatively safe, and combined with his relations with other High Elves, it allows him to make lots of friends and possible confederations to take over the donut no problem. However, everything outside of this isn't as great. He's a good battler, but at the end of the day he's a dude on a horse with no spells or dragons. He can make use of strong and cheap units, but others can do better. He's not bad, but sadly, I think he is the worst of the High Elves. Coming in 5th we have Teclis. His effects are similarly simple to his brother, but whether they're as good is up for debate. He has more improved relations with most good aligned factions, but given his starting location, it's unlikely that this will result in anything than a relatively secure peace. Reduced allied recruitment cost is neat if you can get alliances with those improved relations, but pretty niche. Increased recruit rank for Castle Lords and Heroes is actually pretty great, as it lets them become useful immediately. And reduced upkeep cost for Swordmasters and Phoenixes is okay, but they're late game units, so at that point gold just starts to become a non-issue anyway. He starts on the very southern tip of the old world, just a short sail away from the southern realms of chaos. He has Tzeentch on his doorstep, followed by Kairos to the south and Skaven to the northeast. It's a pretty rough start and forced him to establish magical dominance as fast as he possibly can. There's very few allies nearby, even with his improved relations, so you're really in a battle for survival from the get-go. His army effects are pretty much butt cheeks and not in a good way. Plus 10 wins in magic capacity, and that's it. This isn't bad, as it lets one of the most powerful casters cast more, but it's also nothing you can't get from skills or items, so pretty basic. Of course, Teclis is a crazy powerful spellcaster with a very strong selection of spells from all kinds of lores for massive damage. He can also pick up almost every single spellcasting passive in the game, granting him all kinds of bonuses whenever he casts. Add on the cost reduction for all spells, vastly increased reserves and recharge speed, and he can be casting near constantly. And as a cherry on top, he brings some decent buffs for all spellcasters in the faction to keep him humble. In battle, Teclis is pretty much a pure spellcaster if I ever saw one. Basically no melee ability, and self-preservation when he's on foot. Even on his Arcane Phoenix, he has passable melee stats at best with good damage and not much survivability. Spellcasting is a far better use of his time, so the mounts are just there to get him into position a little bit faster. His spells are a great selection with tons of damage, and basically infinite wins to spam the night away. Now, the scrawny brother really isn't that much better than Tyrion. On my scoring sheet, he lost 3 categories but won 2. those being skills and battle prowess. Teclis is simply a stupidly cracked spellcaster that he abracadabras himself into 5th place on that alone. He can bring so much magical value to his army and faction that it cannot be understated. Yes, he may have a pretty awful stat and faction and army effects. However, if you spam spellcasters and level up his casting as fast as you can, he's simply crazy. He's probably harder than Tyrion, at least at the start, but he quickly catapults himself in power so drastically that it cannot be ignored. Coming in 4th place we have Eltharion. He has by far the most in-depth mechanics, so let's hit the spark notes. The dungeons of Athol Tamara let him upgrade many areas of his faction, alongside interrogating enemy lords for fun and profit. The Mists of Ivres allow him to make Ulthuan nigh on impenetrable. He hates the greenskins and has elite early game units to give him some help in his challenging starting location. All in all, he may start out okay, but quickly spirals out of control if he invests in Athol Tamara and the Mists. Of course, Eltharion has a dreaded double start with his army being over in the Badlands and another force at home for Tor Ivres. You do have the option to give up Tor Ivres and focus on the Badlands, but assuming you don't, you've got quite a lot on your plate. You have a starting war on Ulthuan to take out some greenskins and secure a couple of provinces. After this is the regular Ulthuan method of befriending High Elves at will and wiping out any that don't, all whilst you kick out invaders. Over in the Badlands, it's Greenskin Central, along with all the other pals in the region like Beastmen, Ogres, Khorne and more. You're not exactly encouraged to build a home here, so you're fighting on the edge of your army's ability pretty much constantly, making it pretty intense to stay alive. His own army gains immunity to wasteland attrition, which is a pretty good coincidence given that's where he starts the game. He also upgrades the defense and leadership of those early game units from his faction effects, so he can really do a lot of work for not a lot of money. And lastly, all units in his army cause fear when battling greenskins, which will come in extremely useful to break enemies fast and open up their lords for imprisonment. His unique skills are a mix of buffs for himself, his army, and his provinces. Without a singular focus, there's nothing too crazy, but everything here ranges from decent to great, so you can't go wrong. He is more defensive focused for all these buffs, so as long as you build around that, you should be fine. His defensive focus carries over to his combat prowess. He has strong melee stats but not a lot of armor piercing damage, so ends up being better as a frontlines bulwark to keep units confident. He has the lore of high magic, which is fine, but only has one real option for major damage, making him a bit limited in how much value he can generate by himself. Once he's on his Stormwing mount, he gets a bit more armor piercing damage, but drops defense, meaning he's great versus targets he can easily kill without getting pinned down or facing too much resistance. Still, decent spellcasting battler, just not the best at any of those jobs. Just for context on my scoring system, Tyrion had 12 points in total, Teclis had 15, the final 4 lords have 18, 19, 20, and 21. So just know that it's razor thin from this point on, so an argument could be made to move any of these lords around. That said, Eltharion did decently across the board, but was never really at the top for anything. His faction mechanics are the deepest, but it can take quite a lot to get going and see major benefit. His dual start also pulls him down, even with the option to give it back. If you do, you're more or less trapped in the Badlands, and all the benefit from the Mists of Ivres is useless to you. If you don't, your economy is weaker than Keir Starmer's morals. It really does drag him down and put you in a tricky situation right out the gate. Of course, it's possible to dig your way out and start to excel, but that takes some time, and you have to work hard for it rather than him doing it for you. He's a fine battler with fine skills and fine effects outside of his mechanics, but sadly, nothing elevates him to the top. In 3rd place we have Imrik. He's of course the dragon guy, and that expands to basically everything in his faction. His main mechanic are the quest to tame dragons by defeating them in battle. Both of his unique rights bring improvements to dragons and dragon princes, and he recruits both even faster. Basically, if you want to use a lot of dragons, he's your guy. He starts all the way at the bottom of the central wasteland. The starting war is relatively tame, but on his doorstep he has ogres, rats, and eventual chaos dwarves, so it never really becomes a chill place to be. On the bright side, he has a lot of options of where to go with habitable terrain in pretty much every direction. I just can't promise that the folks there will give it up without too much resistance. His army brings little love for dragons with significant upkeep reduction for some pretty expensive units. Alongside this, he has an increased movement range and immunity to nearby attrition, allowing him to take on everyone nearby on his quest to chase down all the dragons. His unique skills are mainly focused on buffs for his army. We've got all kinds of stat boosts with a lot of focus on defense to help with dragon units' biggest weakness. If you stick to his gimmick, you'll get a ton of value out of these, otherwise you might be a little bit disappointed. On foot, Imrik is a fantastic battler. He has outstanding melee stats and armor piercing damage, making him great at both dealing damage and avoiding taking it. Once he's on his dragon mount, he's on a dragon mount, so that obviously rocks with a ton more damage, some breath ability, and the only downside being the large size. Outside of raw battling, he brings some decent buffs to nearby units, making him work well as part of a dragon hit squad, and with his faction, that should be no problem. Imrik just about eked out ahead of Eltharion, mostly due to simplicity. In my opinion, Imrik's mechanic is a little harder, as the dragon battles can be pretty challenging, especially early on. However, it's much simpler to use that mechanic to your advantage, so I felt that gives him a small edge. Add on the fact he has a still challenging but easy starting location, and just one of them, is a much better battler and empowers his dragons, and he just about starts to pull ahead. He's still plenty challenging, but I believe that challenge is more manageable, and that makes him just a little bit better. You start to get the snowball rolling just a little earlier, and that makes all the difference. In second place we have Alith Anar. Alith is of course the sneakiest of the High Elves and by far the most vicious. His faction mechanic is literally a hit list of characters he has to hunt down and defeat, either in battle or using heroes, in exchange for all kinds of rewards. He even has his own little Agent 47 he can call in via a right if a target is being really tricky. All his armies gain increased movement range alongside a reduction of global recruitment, and both of these are pretty great, so no complaints there. Finally, all armies can make use of teleportation and stalking stance, so should have no problem turning every single army to their advantage. He starts on the east of the Dark Elf territory, so he's very much on the doorstep of a number of powerful factions. After his relatively lengthy starting war, he has Crone to the north across the sea, Silostra to the south, Taurox to the west, and all kinds of Dark Elves both minor and major to worry about. Stalking can help with a lot of this, but it's still a pretty challenging location and far from any real chance of allies. The most powerful aspect his army brings is the ability to use Stalking stance to ambush on the move and turn battles so hilariously in his favour. Add on that increased ambush success chance, and you're probably going to be fighting the majority of his battles with a huge advantage. Combine that with a massive upkeep reduction for shadow units which excel at sneaky ambush tactics, and he's one damn elusive lord to pin down. His skills reinforce his main gimmick with buffs mainly focused on stealth and ranged units. His shadow units benefit the most, but all units will be significantly more devastating when battling against High Elves. It's a pretty strong line as long as you're making the most of his gimmick. In combat, he's of course all about that sneaky ranged focus. He can fire on the move and deals excellent armor piercing damage from a very large distance. However, the lack of area damage makes this best used versus single targets, and at such a large range, the larger that single target is, the better. In melee, he's not great with no real armor piercing damage, so he's pretty much just a ranged sniper with a Nito clone ability to distract enemies. Alith Anar crept up these rankings based on sheer sneakiness. The ambush stance is just so busted that I simply had to toss him up here. Every single army getting ambush and teleportation is just craziness and makes his slightly challenging starting location into a bloodbath, and you're the one who's bathing. Honestly, outside of this he's a pretty basic lord, but I don't really think he needs anything else. He's on the weaker side in battle unless you're up against a bunch of large single entities, but when you're ambushing enemies every turn and buffing your skirmishing troops to hell and back, he could sit at the back on a lawn chair and still get the win. I think it's obvious why he didn't get the top spot, but second place is still pretty good for the High Elf Snyderverse Batman. Coming in first place we have Alarielle. Where Tyrion is the best at uniting Ulthuan, Alarielle is the one who arguably benefits most from it happening. She'll gain a laundry list of bonuses whenever Ulthuan is under High Elf control, but inversely she starts to suffer when it's not, so it's more of a win more mechanic. Cheaper intrigue at court is whatever. Honestly, I forget this mechanic exists half the time, so cool I guess. Her unique rights to empower casters and tree spirits are neato, but hardly game changing. Oh yeah, she can also use tree spirits, which is unique and can be strong depending on your army comp. And lastly, more capacity for handmaidens is fine, but in my opinion they are far from the best heroes in the roster. Her starting location is at the north of the upper ring of Ulthuan, and her starting war takes her all the way to the very tip of the north. This of course allows her to secure the Shrine of Cain early, along with the sword if you're so inclined, and you should be, because she's one of the best to have it. Aside from that, she has Nikari on her doorstep and Crone to the north across the sea, and she will come a-running. Apart from that, she's relatively secure and can team up or confederate the other willing High Elves to keep Ulthuan secure. Her lord effects are also kinda in the win more variety. Lingering bonuses wherever she goes is pretty cool, but most of the time that means regions on the edge of your lands. That is unless you just send her on world tours all the time, which is certainly a choice. The more her lands are affected by corruption, the worse her casting ability becomes, so you really want to make sure you keep things clean. But, most importantly, a damage boost for Sisters of Avalon is frankly hilarious. Most busted units in the game that are already buffable with skills and XP and so on, yeah, give them 15% more damage right out the gate. Why not? She also has the choice between two unique skill lines. Your first option brings some bonuses for her campaign with relations, control and more. The other one is more focused on upgrading her army with reduced upkeep, various stat bonuses, and a little magical boost for her. Both have their merits, so no major complaints from me. In battle, Alarielle is a pure spellcaster with a mix of the Laws of Life, High Magic and Light. This is a much more defensive focused set of spells, so while she may not rack up tons of kills, she can keep her army healthy and battling hard for a very long time. Her mounts are just there for more speed to use her casts, so her compatibility never evolves past this. Now technically, when I was doing my scoring, Alarielle came in second. However, I made the executive decision to push her into first place because, whilst Alith may win on the cards, Alarielle has what it takes to get the finish. First off, her location puts her in prime position to take the Sword of Cain in no time. Her faction effects make her one of the best order factions to hold it, and hold it for a long time. Add on the fact that she buffs Sisters of Avalon range damage, and it's undeniable she's the best High Elf in the game. She may not be the best in battle when she doesn't have the sword, her other effects may be a little wonky, and she may not have the coolest skill tree, but good lord, she is a conqueror that few can stand up to with one of the strongest starting positions in the game, and to me, that makes her the best. But what I want to know is, who do you think is the best High Elf Lord? Let me know in the comments below, like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 rankings, then check out this video all about the greenskins.